The unseen threat. In the vastness of space, where stars were born and died in the blink of an eye, a storm was brewing, one that no one had anticipated. Deep within the heart of the Galactic Council's citadel, a silent hum filled the air as delegates from 100 alien races gathered. It was a rare moment of unity in a galaxy fraught with centuries-old tensions. For the first time in decades, the collective breath of the cosmos seemed to hold steady. But what they faced was not a familiar enemy. No ancient warlord, no cosmic conqueror, no deadly plague. This time, the threat was something new, something unseen. The holographic chamber buzzed to life, casting an eerie blue glow over the assembly. The display revealed the unstoppable march of the Zaron Empire, a force that had spread like wildfire across the galaxy. In the center of the amphitheater, Ambassador Xena, a creature of flowing silver tendrils and translucent skin, stood rigid at the podium. Her voice, usually smooth and confident, cracked with urgency as she spoke. The Zaron have conquered 3 systems in the past cycle. Their technology is unlike anything we've encountered. If we don't act now, there won't be a free galaxy left to defend. A cold shiver ran through the council. Alien faces, some insectoid, others gaseous, were twisted in apprehension. Even the most hardened beings in the room, races that had faced wars and galactic upheaval for millennia, looked uneasy. But what could they do? Their fleets had already been tested against the Zaron and failed. Their tactics were brutal, unpredictable, and their ships, unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, seemed impervious to conventional weaponry. A low murmur spread through the room, voices of doubt, voices of fear. "We are not equipped for this," came a deep, rumbling voice from the back, belonging to Ambassador Threx, a towering warrior from the Tarthar Dominion. "We are not ready for another war, not one like this." At that moment, a figure stepped forward from the shadows at the edge of the chamber. His movements were calm, measured, but there was something about him, something that drew the attention of every single being present. Ambassador Marcus Chen of Earth. A species that had only recently joined the Galactic Alliance, Earth was young, chaotic, and still struggling to define its place among the stars. The humans were ambitious, yes, but there was always a skepticism about them. They were still new to this interstellar community, having only discovered faster-than-light travel a mere 50 years ago. They had no ancient civilizations, no centuries of political experience. In many eyes, humanity was still a child stumbling into a room of giants. But Marcus wasn't intimidated. He didn't need to be. "There may be another way," he said, his voice carrying across the chamber like a ripple in still water. "Perhaps it's time we considered alternative strategies." The room fell silent, all eyes turning toward him. A few skeptical glances were exchanged, but the curiosity was palpable. How could this newcomer, a species so young in the eyes of the galaxy, possibly have anything to offer in the face of such a massive threat? Ambassador Grix, a gelatinous being from the Exorix Federation, narrowed his eyes, his form undulating with doubt. "What makes you think you have something that we don't?" he asked, his voice thick with skepticism. "Your species can barely navigate your own solar system. What could you possibly bring to the table?" Marcus stepped forward, standing tall despite the weight of the moment. "Perhaps it's not about what we have that you don't," he began, "but about how we think. Humanity's strength lies not just in our technology, but in our ability to adapt, to find solutions where there seem to be none." A ripple of unease passed through the council members. Earth's history was both inspiring and terrifying. On one hand, humans had built empires, created wonders, and reached beyond their own planet to touch the stars. But they had also brought ruin to their own kind, waging wars that left entire civilizations in ashes. Could this young species really be trusted? Xena, who had been listening intently, tilted her head, her antennas twitching with curiosity. "What exactly are you proposing, Ambassador Chen?" she asked, her voice quiet but sharp. Marcus inhaled deeply, gathering his thoughts before speaking again. "We have ships. ships that have not been recorded in the Alliance's official logs. These aren't just any warships. These are vessels born of humanity's long history of conflict and ingenuity. They combine our most advanced technology with tactics we've honed over centuries of warfare. A wave of murmurs passed through the council again, this time mixed with disbelief and intrigue. The room had seen weapons, ships, and technologies from countless races, but what could humans possibly have that the rest of them didn't? Grix scoffed. And what makes you think your ships can stand against the Zaron? Our fleets have already failed. Marcus's gaze didn't waver. Because we've learned to think differently. Our ships are designed to adapt, to analyze the enemy on the fly, to change their strategies in real time. They don't just rely on raw power, they rely on ingenuity. And they're not just ships. They're extensions of human willpower. We fight because we understand what's at stake. The room grew quiet, every member weighing Marcus's words. The idea of unleashing humanity's warships was a dangerous one. After all, if their technology was as advanced as Marcus claimed, what would stop them from using it for conquest once the Zaron threat had passed? Xena's voice broke the silence. And once the threat is neutralized, can you guarantee that your ships will stand down? Marcus met her gaze, his voice steady. I can guarantee that we will do everything in our power to protect this galaxy, all of it, including from ourselves if necessary. We are not here to conquer. We are here to defend. The council was split. Some nodded with cautious optimism. Others, like Grix, recoiled in fear. Could they trust humanity to use such power wisely? Then, from the back of the room, came a voice that silenced them all. It was ancient, filled with the weight of countless millennia. Ambassador KZ, the eldest member of the council, stepped into the light. His form, a vast, shifting cloud of energy, pulsed with the rhythm of time itself. I have seen civilizations rise and fall, KZ intoned, his voice carrying a depth that made the very air around them hum. I have witnessed both the greatness and the horrors of sentient life. And I say this, if we do not take this risk, there will be no galaxy left to protect. The council fell silent once again, the weight of KZ's words hanging heavy in the air. The threat of the Zaron was undeniable, and perhaps, just perhaps, the time had come for humanity to prove its worth. But could they handle the power they were about to unleash? Could the galaxy trust the humans to use their ships not as weapons of destruction, but as instruments of salvation? The choice of trust. The silence in the council chamber stretched on, heavy and oppressive. The ancient voice of KZ still echoed in the minds of every delegate, and even those who had been skeptical of humanity's involvement now found themselves caught in the gravity of the moment. In the depths of the cosmos, where time had no beginning or end, the galaxy stood at a crossroads. Would it bend to the will of the Zaron Empire or rise up and fight, united or divided? Ambassador Xena, the Speaker of the Council, stared at Marcus Chen with an intensity that pierced through the growing unease. Her translucent skin shimmered slightly, reflecting the ambient light of the holographic display. You are asking us to gamble with the future of every living being in the galaxy, she said, her voice measured but filled with an undeniable weight. We've all seen what happens when a young race is given too much power too quickly. What if your species becomes a threat itself? The question lingered in the air, its implications far greater than anyone cared to admit. But Marcus didn't flinch. The reputation of humanity, both its brilliance and its destructiveness, was something that had followed them into the stars. Every race here, from the gaseous to the silicon-based, knew the capacity for both creation and destruction that humans held. But Marcus believed in one thing: humanity's resilience, their ability to face overwhelming odds and come out fighting. He didn't need the council to believe in them just yet. He only needed them to believe in the mission. We understand the risk, Ambassador Xena, Marcus said, his voice firm but calm. But we're not asking for a seat at the table of galactic power. We're asking to defend what's left of this galaxy, and we're willing to do whatever it takes to ensure that we don't become the next threat. Xena's antennas twitched as she regarded him with a mixture of skepticism and growing curiosity. And how do you propose to fight this, Zaran Empire? Their technology is beyond anything we've ever seen. They wipe out entire systems in days, without warning. They don't just invade, they consume. The words stung. The Zeron were not simply conquerors. They were a force of nature, a seemingly unstoppable tide that left nothing but devastation in its wake. The galaxy had watched helplessly as 3 star systems fell, the inhabitants either slaughtered or enslaved. The Alliance had launched fleets to stop the Zaron, but every engagement had ended in disaster. Conventional tactics, conventional weapons, they were useless against a foe who fought with no discernible pattern, no rhyme or reason. It was as if the Zaron had learned to anticipate every move before it was made. A low murmur passed through the room again, this time tinged with doubt. What could humanity offer that the greatest military minds of the galaxy could not? Were their ships truly capable of turning the tide? Marcus cleared his throat. "I'm not here to offer you a warship," he said. "I'm here to offer you something more. A way to think differently. Our fleet, the ships I'm speaking of, are not just weapons. They're tools for adaptation. The Zeron's greatest strength is their unpredictability. We've learned to think beyond that, to anticipate not just what they might do, but how they might think. Our ships are designed to read enemy movements and adjust in real time, to force the Zaron into a situation where they're no longer the ones in control." The room went still, the implications of Marcus's words settling like a storm cloud. Could they truly believe it? Could humanity really be the key to outthinking an enemy as elusive as the Zaron? A voice broke the silence, a shrill, high-pitched tone that sent a ripple through the assembly. "How can we trust you?" It was the voice of Threx, the towering warrior from the Tarthar Dominion. His bulbous eyes narrowed, his voice dripping with suspicion. "You say you want to defend us, but how can we be certain that your fleet won't be used to further your own ends? We've seen what humanity is capable of. Your history is full of destruction, of empires built on the backs of those you've conquered. What guarantee do we have that you won't do the same to us?" Marcus felt the weight of those words. He had heard them before, 1,000 times in 1,000 different forms. Humanity had always struggled with the ghosts of its past, with the legacy of violence and war that still lingered in its bones. But he had learned something in the years since first stepping into the role of diplomat, something that every human who had survived their own darkest moments understood. Actions speak louder than words. "I understand your concerns," Marcus said, his voice steady. "But I'm not asking for your trust. I'm asking for a chance to prove it. We're offering our fleet not to conquer, but to protect. We're not here to rule. We're here to defend the galaxy. And if we can't do that, then we don't deserve to be here." Xena, who had remained silent until now, raised her arms, signaling for calm. Slowly, the murmurs died down, though the tension in the room remained palpable. The stakes were high, higher than any of them had faced in centuries. The Zeron were not just a threat to individual worlds. They were a threat to the very fabric of the galaxy. If they succeeded in conquering the Alliance, the entire galaxy would fall under their rule, a galaxy without hope, without freedom. "I want to believe you," Xena said quietly, her voice carrying across the room. "But words are not enough. We need to know that you can follow through on this, that your fleet will be loyal to the cause, not to your own ambitions." Marcus nodded, acknowledging the challenge. "We're ready to prove it. Humanity has been on the brink of extinction before, on our own planet. We understand what it means to fight for survival. We know that if we don't do this, if we don't take action now, the galaxy could be lost forever. That's why we're here, and that's why we're asking you to let us help." Xena's eyes softened for a moment, but the weight of her position pressed down on her like a physical force. She knew that if she made the wrong choice, it could mean the end of everything they had fought to protect. The fate of billions, maybe trillions, rested on the decision she was about to make. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, she spoke. "Then we have no choice but to trust you, for now." The words hung in the air, a fragile agreement that could shift with the slightest breeze. But for Marcus and humanity, it was all they needed, a chance. A chance to prove that they were not just a species of war and destruction, but a species capable of defending, of protecting, of rising above their past. As the council session drew to a close, the representatives slowly filtered out of the room, leaving behind a lingering sense of uncertainty. But for the first time in a long while, there was a flicker of hope that humanity might be able to change the tide of the galactic war, hope that they might just have a place among the stars. But as Marcus turned to leave, he knew one thing for certain: the real battle was only just beginning. The unveiling of humanity's edge. The council chamber had emptied, but the weight of the decision hung like a dense fog over the Galactic Council's headquarters. The delegates had returned to their individual embassies, each retreating into their thoughts, torn between fear and hope. The humans had been given a chance to prove that their species was not just a blip in the galaxy's long history, but a force that could alter its course. The next move would be critical, not just for humanity, but for every sentient being in the galaxy. Ambassador Marcus Chen stood before the viewport of the human embassy, gazing out into the endless void of space. His fingers traced the cool glass as the distant stars blinked back at him, cold and indifferent. This is it, he thought, the opportunity to prove humanity's worth. His mind kept returning to Xena's face, the way her translucent eyes had softened ever so slightly when she had said, "For now." He knew it wasn't a victory, not yet. It was merely a fragile, tentative first step. The Council had agreed to trust humanity with the fleet, but there was no certainty that they would remain allies if humanity failed. Failure, in this case, would mean the complete annihilation of everything they had fought for. "Are we truly ready for this?" Marcus whispered to the empty room. A voice broke through his thoughts. It was the voice of his old friend and colleague, Lieutenant Commander Alia Voss. She had been humanity's first officer in the Galactic Alliance, a brilliant tactician, and one of the few humans to truly grasp the intricacies of intergalactic diplomacy. She had stood by him through countless negotiations, always offering her sharp insights into the minds of other species. But today, her words had a weight that was different. "We're ready, Marcus," she said, stepping into the room, her boots clicking against the metal floor. "We've been ready for this for centuries." Marcus turned, his gaze meeting hers. Alia was holding a data pad, her face serious as she approached him. "The fleet is prepped and waiting," she said, her tone unwavering. "It's time to show the galaxy what humanity can do. And for once, we need to trust in ourselves. We've been through worse." Marcus nodded slowly. "I know, Alia. But this is different. The Zaran aren't like any threat we've faced before. If we fail, it's not just our species that will fall, it's everything. The entire galaxy will fall." Alia's expression softened, and she stepped closer. "That's why we're doing this. We're not just fighting for Earth, Marcus. We're fighting for everyone. For all the worlds that will be wiped out by the Zaran. This is our moment to prove that humanity has more to offer than just destruction. We've been waiting for this for centuries." The weight of her words settled into Marcus's chest, but he knew she was right. Humanity had endured wars, plagues, and near extinction. Every time they had faced their darkest hour, they had emerged stronger. This was no different, but it was the unknown factor, the Zaran, that gnawed at his mind. They were like a disease spreading through the galaxy, unstoppable, relentless, and utterly alien. How could they face something like that? Alia handed him the data pad. "The fleet is ready, Marcus. You should see it for yourself." Marcus took the pad and activated it, a 3D holographic image of the human warships flickering into existence before him. The ships were unlike anything else in the galaxy, sleek, angular, and imposing. Their designs weren't just meant for battle. They were built to adapt, to learn, to evolve. Each vessel in the fleet had a neural interface capable of analyzing enemy tactics in real time and adjusting its approach accordingly. The ships were built for humans who thought with a different mindset, one that embraced chaos and unpredictability, rather than strict discipline and order. These were not just warships, they were extensions of human ingenuity and resilience. "We've built these ships to think, Alia," Marcus said, his voice filled with both awe and a lingering sense of fear. "We've learned from our past, our mistakes, and used that knowledge to create something that can't be anticipated. These ships won't just fight, they'll change the rules of warfare itself." Elia nodded, her gaze lingering on the holographic fleet. "This is humanity's greatest strength, our ability to adapt. But we're not just fighting with technology. We're fighting with something the Zaron don't have: determination. We fight for survival, Marcus. For everything we've lost, everything we're about to lose." Marcus's mind drifted back to the Council's reaction. Their skepticism had been palpable, but so had their desperation. The Zaron Empire was a nightmare, and the only thing scarier than facing them was knowing there was no one left to stop them. Humanity's offer wasn't just about military might. It was a gamble, yes, but it was also about hope. Hope that even in the darkest moments, something as unpredictable as humanity's spirit could turn the tide. "Let's hope that spirit is enough," Marcus muttered as he activated the fleet's battle simulation on the datapad. The training begins. As the fleet prepared to leave the orbit of Earth, a series of simulations were run to test the adaptability of the ships. Marcus and Alia stood in the command center, watching the live feed as each ship responded to the mock Zaron invasion. It was a test, one that would push their technology to the limits. But it wasn't just about technology, it was about human ingenuity. Simulation. Zaron battle tactics engaged, a technician's voice announced. The screen lit up with a series of rapidly evolving battle scenarios. Zaron ships attacking in unpredictable ways, their movements erratic and seemingly random. But humanity's fleet was not only responding, it was learning. The ships adapted, recalculated, and countered every move the Zaron made. "Look at that," Alia said, her voice tinged with awe. "They're reading the enemy's patterns. They're not just fighting, they are predicting." Marcus watched closely, his eyes narrowing as the simulation continued. The human fleet was holding its ground, adjusting to every new tactic the Zaron employed. It wasn't flawless, but the ships were staying one step ahead. This was humanity's greatest strength, the ability to think, to adapt, to improvise. "I think we've done it," Marcus whispered, barely able to believe the results. "We might actually have a chance." But deep down, he knew it wasn't just about the fleet or the technology. It was about something much deeper. It was about humanity's relentless spirit to survive. The Zaron might have the advantage of numbers, but humanity had something they couldn't replicate: the will to never give up, no matter the odds. As the simulation ended, the command center erupted in cautious applause. But Marcus remained still, his mind already on the next step. The fleet would soon depart, and the real test would begin. There was no turning back now. As he turned to Alia, he met her eyes with a newfound resolve. It's time. And in that moment, as humanity's ships prepared to leave their homeworld behind, they carried with them not just their technology, but their unwavering determination. The galaxy was about to learn what it meant to face a force greater than anything they had ever known. Into the storm, the vast expanse of space was quieter than usual as the human fleet sailed into the unknown. The distant stars flickered, indifferent to the fate that awaited them. On the bridge of the flagship Resolute, Marcus Chen stood with his arms crossed, staring at the holo display of the Zaron Empire's known territories. It had been days since the fleet had left the safety of Earth's orbit, and with each passing hour, the weight of the mission grew heavier. This was not just a battle for survival, it was humanity's chance to prove they could be more than what the galaxy had once feared. Around him, the crew of the Resolute worked in perfect harmony, their eyes focused on their screens, their fingers dancing over touchpads, entering commands and analyzing data. Alia Voss stood beside him, her calm presence a quiet anchor in the chaos of their preparations. She, too, was staring at the same map, a vast region of space now dominated by the Zaron's advancing fleet. The time for diplomacy was over. The time for war had come. How much longer until we reach Zaron space? Marcus asked, his voice low but steady. He had been asking that same question every few hours, but the answer never seemed to come faster. Another 2 days at most, Aelia replied, her eyes still on the map. The fleet is in good shape. The new algorithms we've integrated are working flawlessly, and the ships are sensed. But Marcus, she hesitated, her fingers pausing above her console. We're not just going into battle. We're stepping into the heart of their empire. We don't know what's waiting for us. Marcus nodded, feeling the knot of uncertainty tightening in his stomach. No one could predict the Zaron's tactics. Not even their most advanced warships had been able to anticipate the sudden shifts in strategy that made the Zarans so dangerous. They weren't just conquerors. They were a storm, disruptive, unpredictable, and without mercy. And now, humanity's fleet was about to fly directly into that storm. What's our plan once we enter their space? Marcus asked, turning to face her. Aelia exhaled slowly, her lips pressing into a thin line. We stay in formation. We stay unpredictable. The Zaran don't fight like we do. They don't think like we do. We can't engage them head-on. We need to find gaps, weaknesses, opportunities they don't even know they're leaving. She turned to Marcus, her eyes sharp. We need to be one step ahead, and that's where our edge lies. We adapt. They don't. Marcus held her gaze for a long moment, the weight of her words sinking in. They weren't just talking about ships or technology anymore. They were talking about how humans thought. It was their creativity, their ability to improvise in the face of chaos, that could make the difference between life and death. That, more than anything, was what would guide them through the coming battle. Then let's make sure we stay ahead of them, Marcus said finally, his voice unwavering. A silent, ominous warning. 2 days later, the fleet crossed the threshold of the Zaron Empire's borders. The stars seemed to darken, the edges of space itself shifting in a way that felt wrong. The sense of anticipation was thick, almost suffocating, as each ship in humanity's fleet glided silently toward their first objective, a Zaron stronghold, rumored to be at the center of their expansion efforts. For the first time since the fleet's departure, Marcus felt the full weight of their mission. The Resolute was a beacon of human resilience, but it was surrounded by ships that carry humanity's last hope for survival, ships built not just for battle, but for survival in a universe that seemed to be growing increasingly hostile. As they neared their target, the first sign of the Zaran appeared, an anomaly on the sensors, something that shouldn't have been there. A strange, low-frequency pulse shot across the communications bands, rattling the fleet's equipment for a split second before it disappeared. What was that? Marcus asked, his hand instinctively reaching for the comms panel. It's a warning, Aelia said, her eyes narrowing. They know we're here, and they want us to know they're watching. The lights in the command center flickered as another pulse came through, this time stronger, more sustained. It was clear now. The Zaron were communicating with each other in ways that the humans could not fully decipher. But what was even more unsettling was the fact that there was no immediate attack. The Zaron were patient, and that made them even more dangerous. We're in their territory now, Marcus muttered, but they're not attacking. Why? They're testing us, Aelia said. They're waiting to see what we'll do. Marcus clenched his fists, waiting. It was always waiting with the Zaron, but for how long? Before he could respond, the sensors lit up with another set of pulses, this time originating from a distant moon orbiting a nearby planet. It was faint, but unmistakable, a massive Zaron fleet, hidden just beyond the horizon, ready to strike at the humans when they least expected it. Deploy the fleet, Marcus ordered sharply. Prepare for engagement. Full tactical readiness. The calm of the space around them was replaced by a flurry of activity. Each ship's systems shifted into battle mode, their shields powering up, weapons systems engaging. There was no turning back now. The fleet was in motion. A dance of uncertainty. The Zaran fleet emerged from behind the moon in a flurry of chaotic movements. Unlike any fleet Marcus had seen, their ships seemed to blur in and out of sight, their presence shifting unpredictably, as though they were not entirely anchored in space. They attacked with no warning, their tactics brutal and direct. Waves of energy shots collided with humanity's shields, sending shockwaves through the Resolute as alarms blared across the deck. But Marcus had anticipated this. He had prepared for it. Humanity's ships had been designed not to fight against the Zaran's might, but to outwit them. "Hold formation," Marcus called over the comms, his voice steady even as the chaos of battle erupted around him. "Let them come to us. Let them make the first move." The Zaran ships surged forward in a wave, their unpredictable attacks striking fast and hard. But the human fleet did not panic. The ships swerved and weaved, shifting positions in real time as they responded to the erratic patterns of their enemies. Each ship, no matter how small or large, had been equipped with an adaptive battle system that learned from every hit, every attack. The ships weren't just vessels of war, they were extensions of human thought. For a moment, it seemed as though the Zaran were getting the upper hand, but then a small ship, Pioneer, executed a maneuver that threw the Zaran fleet off balance. The human ship seemed to vanish into thin air, reappearing moments later in a completely different position, striking the Zaran's flank. The Zaran ships had been expecting their prey to behave in predictable ways. Now they were faced with a force that refused to comply. "Now, we strike," Marcus shouted. Humanity's fleet surged forward, pushing through the storm of energy beams and debris. The Zaran might have had the numbers, but humanity had something else, a way to adapt, a way to turn the enemy's chaos into their own advantage. As the battle raged on, Marcus stood at the heart of the command center, watching the unfolding fight with a fierce determination. The fleet wasn't just fighting to win, they were fighting to survive, to prove that humanity's way was more than just brute force. It was creativity, it was strategy, it was ingenuity. The galaxy had underestimated humanity, but the Zaran would soon learn the truth. Humanity wasn't here to conquer, they were here to change the rules of the game. The turning point. The first hours of the battle were chaos, an overwhelming storm of energy pulses and laser fire that rocked the very fabric of space itself. Marcus Chen stood on the bridge of the Resolute, his knuckles white as his hands gripped the console in front of him. The Zaran fleet had not expected humanity to fight back with such ferocity. The battle was anything but predictable, with human ships darting through the skirmish like shadows, constantly shifting positions and throwing off the Zaran's ability to target them. The Zaran ships were massive, their sleek, dark hulls designed to intimidate. They seemed to glide effortlessly through the conflict, their movements precise and merciless. Yet the humans, with their adaptive systems and unorthodox tactics, were proving to be an elusive and dangerous opponent. The Zaran's initial confidence was slowly being eroded, and the human fleet was starting to gain ground. Elia Voss stood at Marcus's side, her expression unwavering as she analyzed the battle unfolding before them. The Resolute was positioned at the heart of the fight, coordinating the movements of the entire fleet. Despite their innovative tactics, the battle was not one-sided, and humanity's fleet was taking damage. The Zaran were relentless, and their adaptive abilities made them formidable. But there was something in the air, something shifting, something changing. "The Zaran are starting to regroup," Alia said, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "They've noticed our strategy. They're starting to adjust." Marcus's eyes darted over the tactical display, watching the Zaran fleet converge into tighter formations. The initial unpredictability of the battle was fading, and now the Zaran were bringing their full weight to bear. The time for evasive maneuvers was running out. If humanity didn't act soon, the tide of battle would shift in favor of their enemies. "What's our next move?" Marcus asked, his voice sharp with urgency. Alia's fingers danced across her console, her brow furrowed in deep concentration. "We have a few tricks left, But they won't last long. We need to press our advantage, force them into a corner. We can't keep dancing around them forever." Marcus nodded. He understood what she meant. The Zaron was strong, but they weren't invincible. The key was to exploit their overconfidence, to make them believe they had the upper hand, and when the time was right, they would strike. A bold decision. Meanwhile, aboard the Pioneer, the smallest and most experimental ship in the fleet, Captain Jackson Lee was preparing to take a huge risk. Jackson was one of humanity's brightest minds, a young captain with a reputation for unconventional tactics. It was his strategy that had helped turn the tide of the initial skirmish, and now he was about to take it one step further. "Captain," his first officer, Lieutenant Tessa Grant, said, her voice tight with apprehension, "if we do this, there's no turning back. The Zaron won't just see this as a maneuver. They'll see it as an act of defiance. They'll come for us with everything they have." Jackson turned to her, a confident but grim smile on his face. "Let them come. We'll give them something to chase." He wasn't wrong. If humanity was going to win this battle, they needed to do something bold, something that would throw the Zaron off balance. The Pioneer was equipped with a unique propulsion system, one that could momentarily bend the laws of physics. It was an experimental drive that had never been tested in combat. If Jackson could use it correctly, he could create an opening in the Zaron's defenses, a critical vulnerability that humanity could exploit. Jackson made the decision in an instant. "Activate the phase warp drive," he commanded. The crew of the Pioneer hesitated, unsure whether they were truly ready to use such a volatile system. But Jackson's calm resolve settled their nerves. They had no choice. The battle was slipping away, and humanity needed to take risks if they were to survive. The phase shift. With a humming sound that vibrated through the Pioneer's hull, the ship's engines powered up. The phase warp drive was a gamble, a move that, if it failed, could tear the ship apart. But Jackson had no time to think about failure. He had to trust in his crew, in the technology they had developed, and in the human spirit of innovation. Suddenly, the Pioneer flickered, becoming a blur on the sensors before vanishing entirely from view. It wasn't invisible. It had shifted out of phase with the rest of the space-time continuum, moving in a state that the Zaron fleet could not track. The Zaron ships, momentarily confused, tried to lock onto the ship's last known location, but the Pioneer had already moved. It wasn't just moving through space, it was moving beyond it, leaving the Zaron in the dark. The fleet had no idea where the Pioneer would strike next. They only knew that it would come from an entirely new angle. "Captain, we're in," Lieutenant Grant said, her voice filled with awe. "We've created the opening." Jackson looked out the forward viewport, the stars appearing to stretch and twist in strange patterns as the ship surged forward, prepared to re-enter real space at a critical point within the Zaron formation. At that moment, Marcus's voice crackled through the comm system, steady and confident. "All ships, follow the Pioneer. Create the opening we need, now." The human fleet, inspired by Jackson's bold maneuver, charged forward, taking full advantage of the confusion. The Zaron, struggling to reorient themselves, began to fall into disarray. The human ships moved swiftly, executing complex evasions and strikes that no one had expected. It was a ballet of destruction, a precise dance that relied on human adaptability, not sheer force. The price of victory. For hours, the battle raged on. The Zaron fleet was no longer the overwhelming force it had once seemed. They were scattered, struggling to adapt to the unpredictability of humanity's tactics. Marcus and Elia watched as the enemy ships, once coordinated and lethal, began to splinter. It wasn't over yet, but humanity had gained the upper hand. But it wasn't without cost. Humanity's fleet had suffered losses. Several ships had taken heavy damage, and one of the smaller vessels had been destroyed in the first wave of the Zaron counterattack. Yet despite the losses, humanity's resolve was unshaken. Every ship that fell only fueled their determination to fight harder, to push further into the heart of the Zaron Empire. Alia's voice was tight with exhaustion as she glanced at Marcus. "We've done it. We've cracked their formation. Now we just need to finish it." Marcus nodded, but his gaze was distant. The victory was still uncertain, the outcome still in the balance. The Zaron had been wounded, but they weren't defeated. Humanity had pushed them back for now, but what would come next? "We'll finish it," Marcus said, his voice steady. "This is just the beginning. We've made our mark. Now we take the fight to them." As the battle continued to unfold, humanity's fleet pushed deeper into the Zaron's territory, the first victory of many hanging on a thin thread. The story of humanity's defiance had only just begun. The heart of the Empire. The silence that followed the battle's first victory was deafening. Humanity's fleet had succeeded in striking a significant blow to the Zaron Empire. But as the dust settled and the stars once again took their familiar, cold positions, Marcus Chen couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that gripped his chest. This was only a small victory. The Zaron were wounded, yes, but not broken. Not yet. The Resolute drifted in the aftermath, its hull scarred from the energy blasts that had rained down on it, but the human fleet had made it through. Still, Marcus knew the real test had yet to come. The Zaron would regroup, learn from their mistakes, and counterattack. They had to be ready, not just for the immediate confrontation, but for the long game. The war was just beginning. As Marcus surveyed the damage reports, a sharp voice broke his concentration. It was Alia Voss, standing at his side with a look of determination in her eyes. "We've done it, Marcus. We've breached their lines, but this is just the beginning. We have to strike at the heart of their empire. The Zaron won't stop unless we push forward." Marcus met her gaze. Her words were true, and the time to hesitate had passed. The enemy was reeling, but they wouldn't stay down for long. He looked out into the vastness of space, the cold stars staring back at him, distant and indifferent. It was as if the universe itself was watching, waiting to see whether humanity would rise to the challenge or falter under the pressure. "I agree," Marcus said. "We need to keep the pressure on them. If we can push deeper into their territory, we can force them to commit all their forces to one place. But where?" Alia nodded, her fingers already flying over the tactical console. "We've intercepted several encrypted transmissions. There is one place where the Zaron have focused their efforts, a world called Kidath. It's where their fleet's command center is located. We strike there, we hit them where it hurts." The thought of attacking the heart of the Zaron Empire sent a chill down Marcus's spine. Kidath was a highly fortified planet, a place where the Zaron had concentrated their most advanced weapons and fleet operations. It was a place of power, and humanity's plan to attack it was nothing short of suicidal. But there was no choice. If they didn't strike now, the Zaron would only grow stronger. "We'll need every advantage we can get," Marcus said, turning back to the holographic map. "What's the status of the fleet?" "We've lost a few ships, but our tactical advantage is still intact. The Pioneer is reporting that the phase warp drive system has been recalibrated and is ready for use again. If we time it right, we can use it to get behind their defenses." Marcus felt a flicker of hope. Humanity's adaptability had proven to be a game-changer. The Zaron was strong, but they had one critical weakness: predictability. While the Zaron relied on brute force and rigid tactics, humanity's fleet was designed to move quickly, think on its feet, and adapt to any situation. "Then let's do it," Marcus said. "Prepare the fleet for a full assault. Kidath is our next target." The assault on Kidath. The journey to Kidath was tense. Every sensor aboard the Resolute was on high alert, scanning for any sign of the Zaron's counterattacks. Marcus paced back and forth on the bridge, his mind racing through every possible scenario. The fleet would have to be at its absolute best. Every ship, every officer, every crew member would have to be in perfect synchronization. One mistake, one miscalculation could spell disaster. Alia stood at his side, her eyes scanning the reports that flooded in from the rest of the fleet. We'll be in Zaron-controlled space in a few hours. They'll know we're coming. Then we make them regret it, Marcus replied grimly. Let them know they're facing something they've never seen before. The plan was simple in its execution, but its complexity lay in the details. The fleet would enter Kadaf's system at full speed, using the Pioneer to create a brief, unpredictable shift in the space-time continuum. It would be a one-time maneuver, a leap that would send the ship, and several others, into the heart of the Zaron defenses. The element of surprise would give them the upper hand for a crucial moment. Phase warp drive online. Jackson Lee's voice came through the comms, calm but tinged with excitement. We're ready to roll out. We'll lead the charge. Do it, Marcus ordered, his voice cutting through the tension on the bridge. The fleet lurched forward, and the stars ahead twisted and warped as the Pioneer and a handful of other ships activated the phase warp drive. The moment of transition was brief, a mere flicker, but it was enough. The human ships appeared just beyond Kadaf's defenses, just as the Zaron fleet had been expecting their enemy to approach from the other side of the system. For a split second, the Zaron were caught off guard. Their massive battleships, usually so intimidating and precise, hesitated. It was in that fleeting moment that humanity struck. The first wave of human ships swooped in like a storm, unleashing torrents of energy blasts, disrupting the Zaron's sensors and forcing them to scramble. The battle raged as the human fleet swept through Kadaf's atmosphere, striking Zaron ships with unmatched precision. Each human ship was a blade in the dark, cutting through the Zaron's defenses. But the Zaron were far from finished. They were regrouping, readying their retaliation. As the battle intensified, Marcus couldn't shake the nagging feeling that the Zaron weren't just reacting, they were anticipating. They were learning. Humanity's fleet might have had the upper hand for now, but if the Zaron adapted too quickly, the entire battle could shift in an instant. A dangerous revelation. Then came the revelation that changed everything. The Pioneer, deep within the heart of Kadaf's defense grid, transmitted a series of encrypted signals. Jackson Lee's voice was frantic as it came through the comms. Marcus, we've uncovered something. The Zaron are not just fighting for territory. They are building something here. A weapon. A weapon unlike anything we've ever seen. Marcus's heart skipped a beat. A weapon? What kind of weapon? I don't know yet, but it's massive. They're hiding it in Kadaf's core, a structure that looks like a giant energy reactor. It's drawing power from the planet itself. Whatever it is, it's not just another battleship. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. The Zaron had never shown interest in using a weapon of such magnitude before. The time for strategy had passed. This was a race against time. If the Zaron activated whatever weapon they had, humanity might not stand a chance. Get me the schematics for that reactor, Marcus said, his voice calm but urgent. We need to know how to stop it. Now. As his crew scrambled to analyze the data, Marcus made a bold decision. We'll hit them at the heart. If we take down that weapon, we take down their entire empire. Alia's eyes locked with his, a silent understanding passing between them. This wasn't just a battle for survival anymore. This was a battle for the future of the galaxy. Prepare for a full assault on Kadaf's core, Marcus ordered. We end this here.